They say the worst betrayals don't come from your enemies. They come from the people you would have trusted with your heartbeat. My wedding was 48 hours away when my entire future shattered behind a half-open hotel door. Up until that moment, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I was 29 years old, successful, surrounded by people I loved, and engaged to a man who seemed capable of moving mountains just to see me smile. My name is Naomi Carter, and for 3 years I believed Kenji Takahashi was the love story people spend their whole lives searching for. The rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan bridal suite as I stood in front of the mirror wearing the most beautiful dress I had ever seen. Layers of ivory fabric flowed around me like a dream. My mother dabbed tears from the corners of her eyes while the seamstress adjusted the final details. Even now, I can still hear my mother's voice. "You look happy, baby." Happy wasn't a strong enough word. I felt safe, and that mattered more. Because loving Kenji had never been simple. The newspapers called him a billionaire businessman. The city whispered different things. Powerful things. Dangerous things. Stories that followed him wherever he went. But none of those stories matched the man who brought me coffee when I worked late. The man who remembered every anniversary. The man who sat beside my hospital bed for 2 straight nights when I got sick last winter. The man who looked at me like I was the only person in a crowded room. That's the version of Kenji I loved. The version I planned to marry. Around noon, my best friend Vanessa arrived carrying garment bags and enough excitement for 10 people. Vanessa and I had been inseparable since college. 12 years of birthdays, heartbreaks, career struggles, and impossible dreams. She was the sister life gave me. When she wrapped her arms around me that afternoon, I had no idea it would be one of the last times I would ever trust her completely. 2 more days, she squealed. Mrs. Takahashi. I laughed and rolled my eyes. Still sounds weird. Get used to it. Looking back now, I replay that conversation. Constantly. Searching for clues. Searching for cracks. Searching for anything that could have warned me. But there was nothing. Not a single sign. By 5 o'clock, the fitting was finished. My mother left for a family dinner. Vanessa headed downstairs to meet vendors. I realized I'd forgotten my phone in one of the hotel conference rooms where we had finalized seating charts earlier that morning. Seemed like the smallest thing. A 2-minute inconvenience. One tiny decision. Funny how life works that way. The moments that change everything rarely announce themselves. The hallway outside the ballroom was quiet. Soft music drifted through hidden speakers. My heels clicked against polished marble as I walked toward the room. I remember feeling calm. Excited. Certain. Then I saw the door. Slightly open. Voices inside. Familiar voices. One belonged to Kenji. The other belonged to Vanessa. I smiled at first. They had become friends over the years. It wasn't unusual. I stepped closer. Reached for the handle. And froze. Because through that narrow opening, I saw something that made the entire world stop moving. Kenji's hand rested gently against Vanessa's face. And before I could process what I was seeing, before I could convince myself there had to be another explanation, he leaned forward and kissed her. I did not scream. I did not storm into the room. I did not throw accusations or demand explanations. For a few seconds I simply stopped existing. The hallway seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The air left my lungs. My fingers loosened around the door handle as every plan I had made for the future cracked down the middle. Then Kenji pulled away. Vanessa looked shaken. He said something I could not hear. She answered. I did not stay long enough to listen. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe it saved me. Even now I do not know. I backed away before either of them noticed me standing there. One step. Then another. My heartbeat thundered in my ears so loudly that it drowned out everything else. By the time I reached the elevator, my hands were trembling. The mirrored walls reflected a woman I barely recognized. My eyes looked hollow. My face had gone pale. 48 hours. Before my wedding, and I looked like someone attending a funeral. The elevator doors opened into the lobby. People moved around me carrying flowers, garment bags, and wedding decorations. Everyone seemed excited. Everyone seemed happy. I felt completely alone. My phone was still upstairs, but I did not care anymore. I walked outside into the cool evening air and kept walking. The city lights blurred through tears I refused to let fall. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Then I remembered the way his hand had rested against her face. The familiarity. The tenderness. Explanations became harder to believe. An hour later, I found myself sitting on a bench overlooking the Hudson River. Ferries moved across the dark water. The skyline glowed behind me. My engagement ring felt heavier than it ever had before. I twisted it slowly around my finger. 3 years. 3 years of trust. 3 years of believing I knew exactly who Kenji Takahashi was. My phone was gone, but eventually I borrowed one from a coffee shop employee and logged into my email. There were already messages waiting. Vendors. Family members. Wedding planners. The life I had spent months building continued moving forward without knowing it had already collapsed. Then another email arrived. From Kenji. Subject line. Where are you? I stared at it for nearly a minute before deleting it unopened. A second message arrived 10 minutes later. Then a third. Then a fourth. By midnight there were 17. I deleted every single one. Around 1 in the morning my borrowed phone rang. The screen displayed his name. Somehow he had tracked the number. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. And again. Finally I answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. I could hear his breathing. Calm on the surface. Tense underneath. Naomi, he finally said. Just my name. Nothing else. Not hello. Not where are you. Just Naomi. The sound of his voice nearly broke me. Do not, I whispered. Do not lie to me. Silence filled the line. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Dangerous. Then I heard something in the background. A woman's voice. Vanessa's voice. And before either of them could explain a single thing, I ended the call. Sleep never came that night. I rented a small room in a boutique hotel nearly 20 miles from the wedding venue and spent hours staring at the ceiling, while the city lights crawled across the walls. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the same image. Kenji. Vanessa. The look on his face before their lips met. By sunrise I had convinced myself of one thing. The wedding was over. My chest ached when I thought those words, but they felt true. I turned off my phone completely. No calls. No messages. No explanations. I needed silence. Around 10 that morning, I checked out and headed toward my apartment in Brooklyn. The streets were crowded with weekend traffic. Coffee carts filled the sidewalks with the smell of roasted beans and sweet pastries. Normal life continued everywhere around me while mine felt frozen in place. I stopped at a small cafe and sat near the window with a cup of coffee I barely touched. For the first time in years nobody knew where I was. It should have felt peaceful. Instead it felt strange. Kenji always knew where I was. Not because he controlled me. Because he worried. Because he checked in. Because somewhere along the way I had become the center of his world. Or at least I thought I had. The thought made me laugh bitterly. Across the street, a black sedan sat parked beside the curb. I noticed it because the engine was running. 5 minutes later it was still there. 10 minutes later still there. Maybe it was nothing. New York was full of parked cars. Full of people waiting. Full of reasons. Still a knot formed in my stomach. I paid my bill and left through the front door. The sedan remained where it was. As I walked south toward the subway station, I heard an engine start behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. The sedan pulled away from the curb. Coincidence, I told myself. Just coincidence. Across one block. Then another. The car remained behind me. Not close. Not aggressive. Just there. Following the same turns. My pulse quickened. I entered a pharmacy and pretended to browse shelves near the front windows. 2 minutes later, the sedan rolled slowly past the entrance. My hands went cold. Someone was watching. Me. The realization landed harder than I expected. I immediately thought of Kenji. Had he sent security? Was he trying to find me? The idea made me angry enough to leave the store. Outside, the sedan was gone. Relief washed over me. Maybe I had imagined everything. Maybe heartbreak was turning me paranoid. Then my phone vibrated. I had turned it on only minutes earlier to call a rideshare. The message came from an unknown number. Just 6 words. Do not go back home today. I stared at the screen. Another message arrived seconds later. Naomi, you are not safe. My blood turned to ice. Before I could react, before I could decide whether the warning was real or some cruel joke, a third message appeared. This one contained a photograph. A photograph of me sitting inside the cafe less than 20 minutes earlier. My stomach dropped so fast it felt physical. The photograph had been taken through the cafe window. Close enough to show my face clearly. Close enough to prove that whoever sent the message had been watching me in real time. I looked up from the phone and scanned the street. Hundreds of people moved along the sidewalk. Business professionals, tourists, delivery drivers, ordinary faces. Any one of them could have taken the picture. Another message appeared before I could think. Do not panic. Do not go to your apartment. I should have blocked the number immediately. I should have called the police. Instead, I typed a single question. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, the response arrived. Someone trying to keep you alive. My hands shook. Nothing about this made sense. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern had been flower arrangements and seating charts. Now I was standing on a Brooklyn sidewalk, reading anonymous warnings from someone who seemed to know my every move. A black SUV turned the corner at the far end of the block. My heart immediately jumped into my throat. For a split second I thought it was Kenji. Thought he had found me. But the vehicle kept moving and disappeared into traffic. Relief came and went just as quickly. Another message arrived. Look behind you. Slowly. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me not to. I turned anyway. Across the street stood a man wearing a gray baseball cap and dark sunglasses. He was not looking at me. At least not directly. But the moment our eyes nearly aligned, he started walking away. Fast. My phone vibrated again. That is the 3rd time he has followed you today. I felt cold despite the afternoon sun. 3rd time. Whoever was texting me had been watching him too. Suddenly the situation felt much larger than heartbreak. Much larger than a ruined wedding. I needed answers. There was only one person who might have them. The one person I had spent the last day running from. Kenji. The realization made me angry. I did not want to need him. I did not want to hear his voice. I definitely did not want an explanation for what I had seen. But fear has a way of rearranging priorities. I turned my phone back on fully. The screen exploded with notifications. Missed calls. Voicemails. Text messages. Emails. More than 60 attempts to reach me. All from him. All unanswered. One voicemail sat at the top of the list, received less than 10 minutes earlier. My finger hovered over the screen before I pressed play. His voice filled my ear immediately. Tired. Controlled. Different from the man I knew. Naomi, if you hear this, listen carefully. Do not go home. Do not meet anyone alone. I know you are angry. You have every right to be angry. But right now, nothing matters more than finding you. He paused. I heard someone speaking in the background. Then his voice lowered. There are things you do not know yet. Things I should have told you a long time ago. Please call me before someone else finds you first. The message ended. My heartbeat hammered against my ribs. Because for the first time since leaving that hotel, I realized something terrifying. Kenji did not sound like a man trying to save a relationship. He sounded like a man trying to stop a disaster. For several seconds I sat frozen on a bench outside a small bookstore, replaying the voicemail over and over. The city moved around me in a blur of car horns, conversations, and footsteps, but my attention stayed locked on one sentence. There are things you do not know. Yet, I hated that part of me still trusted him enough to care. After everything I had seen, after everything I believed, some stubborn piece of my heart still listened when Kenji spoke. My phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. This time there was no warning. No photograph. Just an address in Lower Manhattan and a message underneath. If you want answers about your mother, come alone. I stared at the screen. My mother had died when I was 16. A sudden illness. At least that was what I had always been told. The message made no sense. Yet the knot in my stomach tightened immediately. Very few people knew how much losing her had shaped my life. Even fewer would use her memory to get my attention. I almost deleted the text. Then another message arrived. Ask Kenji why he never told you about Eleanor Carter. My breath caught. Eleanor Carter was my mother. I had never mentioned her full name publicly. Not online. Not in interviews. Not anywhere. Whoever sent these messages knew things they should not know. I stood and immediately hailed a cab. The driver asked where I was headed. I opened my mouth, ready to give him the address from the text. Instead, I hesitated. Kenji's warning echoed in my head. Do not meet anyone alone. The realization frustrated me because he was right. I changed directions and asked the driver to take me to a busy hotel near Times Square instead. Somewhere public. Somewhere crowded. Somewhere I could think. The ride took nearly 30 minutes. Rain began falling halfway there, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected light. By the time I reached the hotel lobby, the unknown number had sent 3 more messages, all demanding I come alone, all becoming more urgent. I ignored them. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Vanessa. I almost declined the call. Almost. But curiosity won. Naomi, she said the second I answered. Her voice sounded exhausted. Please let me explain. I closed my eyes. Explain what? The part where you kissed my fiancé, or the part where you both lied to me afterward? Silence filled the line. Then I heard something unexpected. She started crying. Not dramatically. Not performatively. The quiet kind of crying that comes from genuine fear. You are in danger, she whispered. That is what we were trying to tell you before you left. My pulse quickened. What are you talking about? Another pause. Then she said the last thing I expected to hear. Your mother saved Kenji's father 25 years ago. And somebody has spent the last 6 months making sure you never learn the truth. The line suddenly went dead. Not disconnected. Ended. As if someone had intentionally stopped the conversation. And seconds later, a new message appeared on my screen. Stop asking questions about the past. The message stayed on my screen long after the glow should have faded. Stop asking questions about the past. For simple words. Yet they carried enough weight to make my chest tighten. Outside the hotel windows, Times Square shimmered beneath the rain, bright and crowded and alive. Inside, I felt completely isolated. I tried calling Vanessa back immediately. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. A third time. Still nothing. Either she had turned off her phone or somebody had made sure she could not answer. Neither possibility comforted me. I sank into a chair near the lobby cafe and stared at the ceiling. My mother had never talked much about her life before I was born. She always smiled when I asked questions. Always changed the subject. At the time I thought she was protecting old memories. Now I wondered if she had been protecting secrets. My phone vibrated again. This time it was not an unknown number. It was Kenji. I watched his name appear across the screen. Once seeing it would have made me smile. Now it filled me with confusion, anger, fear, and something worse. Hope. Against my better judgment, I answered. Neither of us spoke immediately. Then I heard him exhale. Thank God. The words sounded genuine. Exhausted. Human. Where are you? He asked. Why should I tell you? I replied. Silence followed. Because if they know where you are before I do, I cannot protect you. The answer caught me off guard. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. There was no arrogance. No control. Just concern. Protect me from who? I asked. That is a conversation we need to have in person. I laughed bitterly. Like the conversation about you kissing my best friend? Another silence. Longer this time. Naomi, what you saw was not what you think. That is exactly what everyone says when they get caught. My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. I trusted both of you. I know. For the first time he sounded defeated. And if I could go back and handle it differently, I would. Rain streaked down the windows beside me. People hurried through the streets carrying umbrellas and shopping bags. The normal world felt impossibly far away. Tell me about my mother, I said suddenly. His breathing stopped for a second. Who told you about her? Answer the question. Another pause. Then he said something that changed everything. Your mother saved my father's life 25 years ago in Seattle. I froze. What? There was an accident. My father never forgot what she did. Neither did our family. My pulse quickened. Then why keep it secret? Because someone else never forgot either. The answer raised more questions than it solved. Before I could ask another one, a new email notification appeared on my screen. No sender name, no subject line, just a single attachment. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a scanned photograph from 25 years ago. A younger version of my mother stood smiling beside a man I instantly recognized from pictures in Kenji's family home. His father. And written across the bottom in faded blue ink were 6 words that made my blood run cold. If anything happens, protect the girl. My hands would not stop shaking. I stared at the photograph while the hotel lobby seemed to disappear around me. My mother looked happy, younger, alive in a way I had never known her. Beside her stood Kenji's father with one arm resting on the hood of an old pickup truck. They looked like friends. Maybe more than friends. I did not know. What I did know was that somebody had hidden this from me my entire life. Naomi. Kenji's voice came through the phone again. I had forgotten he was still there. Did you know about the photograph? I asked quietly. Silence answered me. Not the silence of uncertainty. The silence of someone deciding how much truth to reveal. Yes, he finally admitted. The confession hurt more than I expected. You knew. I found out 6 months ago. I closed my eyes. 6 months. 6 months of dinners, vacations, wedding planning, and promises. 6 months of looking me in the eye while carrying a secret connected to my mother. Why? My voice barely worked. Because the moment I learned the truth, people started trying to bury it again. His answer made my stomach tighten. What truth? Another pause. Then he said something I never expected. Your mother was supposed to leave something behind for you. I sat upright. What does that mean? I do not know exactly. My father only told me that Eleanor trusted him with a promise. If anything happened to her, he was supposed to make sure you received something when you turned 30. I almost laughed. My 30th birthday was less than 4 months away. The timing felt impossible. Too perfect. Too strange. And somebody does not want that to happen? I asked. Exactly. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the glass like impatient fingers. Across the lobby, a television played silently above the bar. Business travelers moved through the entrance carrying suitcases. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt normal anymore. Vanessa knows about this? I asked. Some of it. My jaw tightened. Then explained the hotel room. This time his exhale sounded exhausted. She came to warn me. I felt anger rise immediately. By kissing you? No. The answer came instantly. Firm. Certain. That was not what happened. I froze. What are you saying? I am saying you saw one moment without seeing what came before it. The certainty in his voice made me hesitate. For the first time since leaving the hotel, doubt entered my anger. Just a crack. Just enough to be dangerous. Before I could ask another question, movement near the entrance caught my attention. A woman had just entered the lobby. Mid-50s. Dark coat. Silver hair. She was looking directly at me. Not searching. Not wondering. Looking. As though she had known exactly where to find me. My phone slipped slightly in my hand. The woman smiled. Then she reached into her purse and removed a small envelope. Kenji, I whispered. There is a woman here. His voice sharpened immediately. Describe her. I did. The silence that followed lasted only 2 seconds. But it was enough. Because when he finally spoke, I heard genuine alarm for the first time. Naomi, he said carefully. Leave right now. That woman attended your mother's funeral 20 years ago. Every instinct told me to stand up and leave immediately. Yet I could not move. The woman remained near the entrance, holding the envelope calmly as though she had all the time in the world. Around her, guests checked into the hotel. Families rolled suitcases across polished floors. Nobody seemed to notice anything unusual. But my pulse was racing so fast it hurt. Naomi, Kenji said through the phone. Listen to me carefully. Do not approach her. I swallowed hard. Who is she? Her name is Margaret Hale. The answer came instantly. Too instantly. He already knew. How? I asked. Because my father warned me about her years ago. I looked at the woman again. She did not appear threatening. If anything, she looked elegant. Refined. The kind of person who volunteered at charity events and sent handwritten holiday cards. Nothing about her matched the fear in Kenji's voice. Then she started walking toward me. Slowly, deliberately. My grip tightened around the phone. She is coming this way. Silence. Then I heard movement on Kenji's end. Doors opening. Voices. The sound of urgency. Leave now, he repeated. I am already on my way. But it was too late. Margaret stopped beside my table. Up close, her eyes were striking. Gray with hints of blue. Familiar somehow. Uncomfortably familiar. She offered a polite smile and extended the envelope. Naomi Carter, she asked. Her voice was gentle. I hesitated before nodding. Your mother asked me to give you this. The words hit me harder than they should have. My mother. Again. Everything kept leading back to her. Margaret placed the envelope on the table and stepped back. She did not sit down. She did not force the conversation. She simply waited. Who are you? I finally asked. Her smile faded slightly. Someone who made a promise a very long time ago. The answer sounded rehearsed. Practiced. As though she had repeated it many times over the years. My phone remained pressed against my ear. Kenji heard everything. I knew he did because his breathing had become noticeably heavier. Do not open it, he said. Margaret's eyes shifted toward the phone. Not surprised. Almost disappointed. He still does not trust me, she said softly. Perhaps he has his reasons. I felt trapped between two realities. On one side stood the man I loved. The man who had hidden secrets from me. On the other stood a stranger connected to my mother. A stranger carrying answers I had spent my entire life searching for. My hand moved toward the envelope before I could stop myself. Felt surprisingly thick. Old. Like it had been waiting for years. Margaret glanced toward the hotel entrance. For the first time she looked nervous. You do not have much time, she whispered. There are people who never wanted you to see what is inside. My heartbeat doubled. What is inside? Her expression softened. The reason your mother chose you before anyone else. Before I could ask another question, the revolving doors spun open. Rain swept briefly through the entrance. Several people stepped inside. And standing among them was Kenji. Soaked from the storm. Eyes locked on the envelope in my hands. The look on his face told me everything. Whatever was inside that envelope had the power to change all of our lives. For a moment nobody moved. Rainwater dripped from the sleeves of Kenji's coat onto the polished hotel floor while Margaret stood silently beside me. The envelope rested between us like a secret that had spent 25 years waiting to be opened. I looked from one face to the other. The woman connected to my mother. The man I was supposed to marry. Two people carrying pieces of a story that somehow belonged to me. Slowly, I slid my finger beneath the seal. The paper inside felt fragile with age. There was a letter. A photograph. And a small brass key attached to a faded ribbon. My breath caught when I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my mother's. I had not seen it in years. But some things never leave you. Dear Naomi. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I swallowed hard and continued reading. If you are reading this, then the promise was kept. There are many things I could not tell you when you were young. Not because I did not trust you. Because I loved you. Sometimes protecting someone means allowing them to hate your silence until they are old enough to understand it. I paused. My hands trembled. The hotel lobby disappeared around me. There was only her voice speaking through ink and paper across decades. The letter explained that years before I was born, she had helped a stranger during one of the worst days of his life. That stranger became Kenji's father. Their friendship lasted years. When danger and uncertainty entered both families, promises were made. One of those promises was about me. The brass key opened a safety deposit box registered under my mother's name. Inside, according to the letter, were journals, photographs, and the complete truth about our families. But one sentence stood above everything else. Naomi, if you ever find yourself questioning who deserves your trust, do not listen to rumors, fear, or pride. Look at actions. People reveal their hearts through what they sacrifice, not what they say. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I lowered the letter. Across from me, Kenji remained silent. He was giving me space. Not demanding forgiveness. Not asking for anything. Just waiting. Then I noticed something I had ignored until now. Exhaustion. Real exhaustion. The kind that comes from days without rest. He had spent every moment searching for me, protecting me, trying to explain despite my refusal to listen. The realization hurt because it forced me to confront another truth. I had seen one moment through a doorway and built an entire story around it. "Tell me what happened," I whispered. Kenji looked at me for a long time. Then he finally did. Vanessa had discovered information about the people trying to suppress my mother's past. She had gone to warn him privately. During the conversation, she became emotional. The moment I witnessed lasted seconds and looked completely different from what it actually was. No fair. No betrayal. Just a misunderstanding that had exploded at the worst possible time. I closed my eyes. The anger I had carried for days suddenly felt heavy and unnecessary. Not because everything was perfect. Trust still needed healing. Secrets still needed answers. But the foundation had not been destroyed. It had been buried beneath fear. When I opened my eyes again, Kenji was still standing there, waiting. The same way he had waited through every storm in our relationship. My mother had been right. Actions mattered. And despite everything, he had never stopped choosing me. I reached for his hand. He looked genuinely surprised. Then he smiled for the first time in days. Outside, the rain finally began to ease. The wedding we had planned never happened. Neither of us wanted it anymore. Months later, after the truth had been uncovered and old promises finally honored, we stood together in a small garden surrounded by family and people we trusted. No grand ballroom. No headlines. No spectacle. Just honesty. Just peace. Just love. And as I slipped a ring onto his finger, I realized something my mother had understood long before I did. The strongest relationships are not the ones that never break. They are the ones that survive the truth.